Hello, my name is Meza-Krehn. I'm an instructor here at UEI. I've been an electrician for a little over 8 years. Now I'm in the teaching portion of things now, but today I'm going to try and teach you guys how to uninstall a switch and install a new one. So I brought you guys over here to my little whiteboard, and I drew a wiring diagram for you because the first step of this process is to really understand how electricity flows through a circuit and how a switch acts in that circuit. So we have our AC source right here. This will be coming from a panel, which is demonstrated right here. So this L1 would be our hot, and this is what's tying directly into our switch. So if we come over here, our L1 or our line would be coming out of our overload protection or our circuit breaker right here. And on the other side of our source is our neutral. So you see our hot gets tied into one side of a switch, and it acts as a sort of bridge that opens and closes. Because if we imagine the electrons flowing through this circuit, if our bridge is in an open position, the electrons have nowhere to go to continue on to complete the path. But if we close it, then we have flow, and that is what allows our light to turn on. So this neutral, we have a hot going into one side of our light, and then we have a neutral coming on the other side. So in our panel, our neutral is going to be our white wires, and they tie in right here into our neutral bus, which is going to be our silver, this silver bus right here in the panel. It's not really important to know the inner workings of a panel, but for this demonstration, all you need to understand is that we have a hot and a neutral. We're sending power, and we also need a return to complete the circuit so electrons can flow through the whole thing. And our switch just acts as a bridge that opens and closes to either disrupt power or allow power to flow. Okay, now that we know kind of how a circuit works and the relationship that a switch plays in that circuit, now we gotta get started and make our working environment safe. So if we're gonna take out a switch and install a new one, we have to make sure that the power being supplied is turned off. Because on one side of our bridge, one side of our switch, there is going to be a supply of power, and that power is going to be constantly hot. So to make sure that we're safe when we're doing a install, we have to make sure that that power is off. So let's take a look at our panel here. This one doesn't have a door on it. Kind of the guts are exposed. So I'm going to take you to one of our fresh ones, and luckily we have a couple circuit breakers in here. So you'll take note in this particular panel, we have some labels here. So usually either right here on the side, right next to our circuit breakers, we're going to have labels that tell us what each circuit is being used for, or on the inside there will be a panel schedule. Because we have our labels on the side here next to our circuit breakers, we don't need a panel schedule. But you take a look at where that switch is. So let's say it's in your master bathroom. If it's in your master bathroom, this circuit breaker might be titled master bathroom. So we would want to turn this breaker off. Now you'll notice when it's on the on position, our toggles here are facing towards the center line of the panel. When we want to turn it off, we have to make sure that the toggle is in the opposite direction of the center of our panel. If it was on our left side, the on position would be facing this way and the off position would be this way, and it's just mirrored on the right side. So we're going to pretend this is our master bathroom circuit breaker, and we're going to make sure it's off. And then we would go to our master bathroom, try to flip the switch and see if the power's on. If it's off, we're good. So now we can move on and start uninstalling our switch that we need to replace. Okay, now we have a better understanding of how a circuit works, how a switch works in that circuit. And now that we've placed our power in an off position and created a safe working environment, let's talk about the tools we're going to need for this job. So we have 4 different items in front of us. So what we're going to need is a Phillips head screwdriver, a pair of wire strippers, flathead screwdriver, and a roll of electrical tape. All right, now that we got all our tools and our material, here's the switch that I'm going to be switching out. We have a pretty standard regular switch that you'll see in almost every home. But for aesthetic reasons, let's say I don't like this switch and I want to switch it out for like a flatter toggle switch right here. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is take off this wall plate. So I'll try to use the power of video editing to time lapse this, but I'm going to get started taking this off. All right, now I got my wall plate off. All that leaves is the switch and the box. Now I can see what wires are being tied in here. Next thing what I need to do is grab my Phillips head screwdriver, and I'm gonna take the switch off of our mud ring. Okay, now I have my switch loose, but now for this, I'm gonna have to take off the mud ring so I have a better look in the box and what's going on in there. Okay, now that everything's off, I have my switch coming out. I see that there's two wires, one going into one brass screw, the other going into the other brass screw, and I have my grounds tied into the ground screw. So all I'm gonna do is keep my Phillips head screwdriver, and I'm gonna start taking off these wires from the switch that I wanna replace. Okay, sorry about that. I had to shut off the video. I had somebody walk into the classroom, but I took off all the wires. I'm pretty much keeping them exactly the way that they were, because all I'm gonna do is install my new switch, which I have right here. And the important thing to remember when we're installing new equipment is that when we wrap our wires around, but when we wrap our wires around, we want to make sure that we are going around the same way that we're going to tighten the screw. That way we have a more secure connection and we don't risk anything coming out if there's a little bit of tension. So I'm going to I have two black wires right here. One's going to be my supply and one's going to be my switch leg. All you got to remember is that it doesn't matter which side of the bridge you put each wire, as long as that they're standing on one side of the bridge. So I'm going to install this one right into here, wrap it around the way that the screw is going to be tightened. I'll tighten that up, and it'll be the same thing for every termination we make, so I'll just speed through ahead. Okay, now that we got all this in, everything's in our switch, we're gonna wanna grab our electrical tape and create something called a protective wrap around our switch. The reason we do this is because let's say somebody doesn't turn off the circuit breaker and we still have power in the switch. What people tend to do is they'll go and grab it and make contact with the terminals, and that'll create a path where they're a part of the circuit, and that's how people get shocked. So we're gonna take this insulating electrical tape, wrap it around these terminals so we eliminate that hazard. Okay, now that we got that done, we can put everything back together, and we have replaced our switch. Now I'm just gonna jump ahead to the finished product. We have our switch in. Everything should be working, or at least installed correctly. Now we're gonna go back to our panel, switch it on, and when we go back, that particular switch isn't hooked up to any lights or anything that we can really test right now. But yeah, everything should be working, and call it good to go.